According to the Environmental Work Group, or EWG, the key ingredient in Roundup's weed-killing poison, glyphosate, is also found in popular oat products and several breakfast foods, including cereals marketed to children. The EWG found that the ingredient is present in 43 of the 45 cereals they tested, and 31 of those contain glyphosate levels well above the organization's health benchmark of 160 parts per billion. Now, glyphosate was also found in organic oats, although it was detected at a low level below the safe threshold. But those that contain the highest levels of glyphosate were Quaker old-fashioned oats, with levels higher than 1,000 parts per billion. Popular children's brands like Cheerios and Lucky Charms also found extremely high levels. To put this into perspective, EWG's Child Protective Health benchmark for daily exposure of glyphosate in food is 160 parts per billion. Quaker oats contain 760. A statement from EWG says EWG's findings raise the prospect that millions of American children are being exposed to a suspected carcinogen at a time when their bodies are rapidly developing. Now, glyphosate was also found in oats, granolas, and other snack bars, while cereal and these easy breakfast foods have all been linked to all kinds of health benefits, including lowering cholesterol and decreased cardiovascular risk. They fail to mention the high risk of exposure to this carcinogen glyphosate. Now, in December, the EPA concluded that glyphosate is not likely to be carcinogenic to humans. But this contradicts that both the World Health Organization and California state scientists have linked glyphosate to cancer. Political Director of Organic Consumers Association, Alexis Baden-Mayer, is also calling for retailers to take initiative.
It takes time for the science to be done, and sadly, people get sick and die in the meantime. So we really need to use a precautionary approach and get these products off the marketplace.
Quaker Oats responded with a statement saying they are following EPA's guidelines. Now, EWG is now urging the EPA to review the findings and asking them to limit the use of glyphosate on food crops. In Washington,
what can consumers do to limit their exposure?
Well, that's something that EWG said right away after the report was published. Does this mean take your Cheerios off the shelf? No, not completely. But you can look for alternative brands, alternative Cheerios, oats that are organic. Now, organic does have some very low level of glyphosate. It's mainly because they think it's the wind that from the organic crops from one farm to the other. But they can look for organic oats. I mean, these are fibers, good fibers that have nutrients for children to be consuming at a young age. It's just to be cautious and really know the types of cereals that you're choosing.
Parents may want to think twice before pouring a cup of juice for their children or for themselves. That's because experts just found an unexpected and dangerous ingredient. Heavy metals are substances that make their way into food and drinks because they occur naturally in the air, water, and soil. They can also occur during the manufacturing process. And now, after testing 45 popular fruit juices across the country, Consumer Reports found high levels of arsenic, cadmium, and lead. The news particularly alarming because some of these juices are specifically popular amongst children. In fact, a CR survey of over 30,000 parents found that more than 80% of parents of children 3 and younger give their kids juice. The nonprofit also found that 75% of their kids drank juice at least one time a day, and drinking just even 4 ounces a day can cause concern. Experts say that children are particularly vulnerable to harmful effects to heavy metal. Dr. Jennifer Lowry, who was involved in the study, said exposure to these metals early on can affect their whole life trajectory. There is so much development happening in their first years of life. Depending on how long children have been exposed to these toxins and how much they've been exposed to, they may be at risk for lower IQ, behavioral problems like ADHD, type 2 diabetes, and cancer, among other health issues. Previous tests from CR and others have found elevated levels of heavy metals in not only fruit juices, but infant and toddler foods, rice and rice products, protein powder, and some types of fish. And while exposure to heavy metals may be less risky to adults, exposure can still lead to health problems. Over many years, small amounts of heavy metals may raise the risk of bladder, lung, and skin cancer, cognitive and reproductive problems, and type 2 diabetes, among other health conditions. Consumer Reports are now urging the FDA to take stronger action against metals found in food products, especially those marketed to children. Before every meal, you're not going to search every single thing that you're eating, whether it's fish or rice or whatever it is. You can't do that before every meal. And like experts say, it's all in the environment around us. So it is extremely difficult for the consumer to avoid heavy metals in their food since they stem largely from the environmental contamination. The key food sources also vary between the metals depending on which metal is in which food. And so that's, again, why they haven't been able to determine a safe limit, or rather safe amount, for specific foods and specific metals. For example, the main source of mercury in certain large fish species is salmon. Salmon has a ton of mercury in it, so you want to limit the consumption that you have with mercury. Arsenic is also found in certain rice and rice products. Cadmium is found highest in certain shellfish